When you step into the lobby of a luxury five-star hotel, everything you see is designed to communicate extreme wealth. The polished Italian marble beneath your feet, the towering crystal chandeliers, the team of immaculate staff moving with quiet precision. It all signals an empire printing money. When rooms cost $1,200, $2,000, or even $5,000 a night, it seems like simple, enviable arithmetic. Sell a couple hundred rooms a night, rake in millions every week, and enjoy the immense cash flow of owning a personal palace.
That sounds entirely logical, but in the world of high-end hospitality, the reality is almost completely inverted. Most five-star luxury hotels are terrible operational businesses. In fact, many of the world's most iconic five-star properties barely turn a profit on their day-to-day operations, and a surprising number lose money every single time a guest unlocks their room door. Understanding why reveals a hidden economic architecture where the visible business is barely a fraction of where the real money, risk, and power actually sit.
To understand how a hotel charging $2,000 a night can be financially fragile, you first have to understand a fundamental split that reshaped the entire industry over the last 30 years: the total divorce between the building and the brand.
When you stay at a luxury hotel, say a Ritz-Carlton, a Four Seasons, or a St. Regis, you naturally assume that the company whose name is carved into the limestone owns the building, pays the staff, and takes home the profits. Almost every major luxury hotel brand operates on what the industry calls an asset-light model. The brand usually doesn't own the building, they don't own the land, they often don't even employ the line-level staff. Instead, the hotel exists as a complex legal partnership between two completely different entities with entirely different risk profiles. On one side is the brand operator, companies like Marriott, Hilton, or Accor. On the other side is the property owner, which could be a real estate investment trust, a sovereign wealth fund, a private equity firm, or a billionaire looking for a trophy asset.
The brand operator sells its name, its reservation system, its global marketing machine, and its management expertise. In exchange, they take a guaranteed cut off the top. They charge a base management fee, typically 2 to 4% of total gross revenue, plus an incentive fee based on gross operating profit, and various marketing and loyalty program fees. Crucially, the brand gets paid first, regardless of whether the hotel is actually making money after debt service and taxes. The property owner, meanwhile, takes on virtually all the financial danger. The owner buys the land, constructs or renovates the building, pays the property taxes, services the massive construction loans, and pays for every single piece of furniture, every maintenance request, and every employee paycheck. This creates a fascinating, almost permanent friction at the heart of luxury hospitality. The brand wants to spend lavishly to maintain an incredible guest experience because high standards protect the prestige of their global brand network. The owner, however, is watching their profit margins bleed out from those exact same operational demands. And those operational demands are staggering. In a standard mid-scale or budget hotel, the operational playbook is simple: minimize labor, maximize room density, and keep overhead near zero. A limited service hotel might operate with a ratio of 1 employee for every 10 or 15 rooms. In a true 5-star property, that math completely flips. To earn and keep a 5-star rating from bodies like Forbes Travel Guide or AAA, a hotel must maintain extraordinarily labor-intensive standards. You need 24-hour room service, dedicated concierges, valets, doormen, turn-down service attendants, sommeliers, spa therapists, and a small army of housekeepers who spend up to 45 minutes meticulously cleaning a single room. It is common for a top-tier luxury hotel to maintain a staff-to-guest ratio of 1-to-1 or even 2-to-1. Before a single guest checks in on a Tuesday afternoon, the hotel's baseline labor costs are already astronomical. Labor alone routinely gobbles up 40 to 50% of a luxury hotel's total operating revenue. Then comes the relentless drain of physical upkeep. Luxury guests pay thousands of dollars precisely because they expect absolute perfection. A scuffed baseboard, a worn carpet, or an outdated bathroom fixture isn't just an inconvenience, it's a reputational disaster that degrades the room rate you can charge.
To prevent this, luxury hotels are subject to brutal capital expenditure, or CapEx, cycles. Every 5 to 7 years, every soft good in the hotel, curtains, bed linens, upholstery, rugs, must be completely replaced. Every 10 to 12 years, the hotel requires a hard renovation, stripping rooms down to the drywall, replacing plumbing fixtures, upgrading technology systems, and redesigning public areas. If an owner refuses to spend millions on these periodic overhauls, the brand operator can issue a default notice, threatening to pull their flag off the building. The owner is trapped. Spend $10 million you might not have to renovate a lobby, or lose the famous brand name that draws in high-paying guests in the first place. This brings us to the core financial metric that every hotel investor obsessively tracks: RevPAR, or revenue per available room. People judge a hotel's success by its occupancy rate, or its average daily room rate, but neither number tells the whole story on its own. A hotel might charge an impressive $1,000 a night, but if only 20% of its rooms are full, it's drowning. Conversely, a hotel might be 90% full, but if it had to drop its prices to $150 a night to get those bodies and beds, it can't cover its 5-star operating overhead. RevPAR solves this by multiplying the average daily rate by the occupancy rate. It gives you a true snapshot of how efficiently the physical asset is generating cash. And in luxury hospitality, yield management, the complex algorithmic pricing that shifts room rates by the hour, is a cutthroat game. When demand spikes during a major city event or peak season, the hotel can charge exorbitant sums, pushing profit margins into healthy territory. But luxury demand is notoriously volatile. It is the first segment of the economy to collapse during a market downturn, a geopolitical event, or a corporate budget freeze. When corporate travel budgets get cut, high-flying executives get told to stay at the 4-star Marriott instead of the St. Regis. It starts with a modest dip in occupancy, say dropping from 70% to 55%. Because a luxury hotel's fixed operational costs are so ridiculously high, you still have to heat the lobby, run the pool, keep the valet standing outside, and pay a full staff. The profit margin doesn't just decline proportionally, it evaporates entirely. To bring occupancy back up, the general manager faces a terrible choice: cut room rates or hold the line. If they cut rates to attract price-sensitive travelers, they risk diluting the brand's luxury status. Regular high-end guests notice when a luxury property starts feeling crowded with discounted tour groups or partygoers. The perception of exclusivity vanishes. Worse, once you lower your rates in a down market, it takes years of slow, painful increments to raise them back to where they were. If they decide not to cut rates, rooms stay empty. Cash flow dries up. The owner, unable to meet the monthly debt service payments on their massive construction mortgage, starts cutting corners. They reduce housekeeping staff, delay replacing worn linens, and postpone critical air conditioning maintenance. Now, the guest experience deteriorates. Negative reviews flood TripAdvisor and Google. High-paying corporate clients quietly switch their preferred booking contracts to a rival property down the street. The RevPAR drops even further. Eventually, the hotel reaches a critical breaking point. It can no longer generate enough profit to cover its debt service. The property enters a death spiral where the mortgage defaults, the management brand pulls its name, and the asset ends up in foreclosure. This isn't a theoretical risk. It is the recurring life cycle of some of the world's most famous properties. And there is no better real-world case study of this chaotic dynamic than the legendary Plaza Hotel in New York City. Opened in 1907 at the corner of Fifth Avenue and Central Park South, the Plaza was built to be the absolute pinnacle of American luxury. For decades, it was the social epicenter of Manhattan elite. But behind its glorious French Renaissance facade sat a deeply unstable financial engine. By the late 1980s, real estate mogul Donald Trump purchased the Plaza for approximately $408 million, calling it a masterpiece and his favorite building in the world.
To fund the purchase, he financed almost the entire amount with high-interest bank loans. Trump quickly learned the brutal reality of five-star operational mechanics. Despite charging top-tier room rates and maintaining respectable occupancy, the hotels simply could not generate enough operational profit to service the massive high-interest debt burden sitting on top of it. The cash flow from guest rooms, banquets, and tea service couldn't overcome the relentless compounding interest owed to lenders. Just 4 years after buying it, in 1992, the Plaza was forced into Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection. Trump was obliged to hand over a 50% equity stake to a syndicate of banks in exchange for more favorable loan terms. Over the next 3 decades, the Plaza became a financial hot potato, passed between foreign investment groups, Kingdom Holdings, and private equity syndicates. In the mid-2000s, new owners attempted to fix the flawed hotel business model through a drastic real estate maneuver. They shut the property down, spent over $400 million, and converted a massive portion of the historic hotel rooms into private residential condominiums. The strategy was simple. Sell off the square footage as luxury real estate to clear the debt, and run a much smaller, condensed luxury hotel in the remaining space. Yet, even in a scaled-down form, the operational friction persisted. Disputes raged between condo owners who wanted privacy and hotel guests who brought noise and foot traffic. The grand food hall in the basement struggled with foot traffic and changing consumer habits. Management flags changed, legal battles erupted over brand ownership rights, and the financial performance remained a constant source of stress for a carousel of international investors. The Plaza proved a stark economic truth. Absolute iconic fame does not guarantee operational profitability. So if five-star hotels are operational money pits plagued by insane labor costs, endless capex requirements, and extreme vulnerability to economic downturns, why do investors keep building them? Why do billionaires, sovereign funds, and institutional funds deploy billions of dollars into acquiring these properties? The answer is that nobody actually buys a five-star hotel for its net operational cash flow. They buy it for what the hotel represents on a completely different financial balance sheet. First, luxury hotels are, at their core, prime urban real estate plays dressed up in high-end hospitality garments. A five-star hotel is almost always situated on an irreplaceable piece of land, a prime corner in Manhattan, a beachfront strip in Paris, or a cliffside in Mayfair, London. Land like that simply cannot be manufactured. Over a 30 or 50-year horizon, the underlying land value appreciates at a rate that frequently dwarfs whatever operation losses or modest profits the hotel business itself generates. When demand drops, a dangerous financial chain reaction begins. Second, luxury hotels serve as extraordinary capital preservation vehicles for ultra-high net worth individuals and sovereign wealth funds. If an investment group from a volatile region wants to park hundreds of millions of dollars in a safe, physical asset in Western Europe or North America, buying a landmark hotel is one of the most effective ways to do it. The goal isn't to get a 15% annual yield on room bookings. The goal is to protect wealth from inflation, currency devaluation, and geopolitical instability. And finally, there is the unquantifiable element: prestige, influence, and access. Third, luxury hotels offer unique debt tax shelter advantages. Through depreciation write-offs on the physical building, equipment, and constant capex upgrades, wealthy owners can use operational losses from a luxury hotel to offset taxable gains generated across other, far more profitable sectors of their business empires. In the high-stakes world of international business and diplomacy, owning a famous five-star hotel grants a level of soft power that standard investments simply cannot buy. It serves as a personal kingdom. The owner gets the best table in the restaurant, the grandest suite whenever they fly into town, and a visible symbol of immense wealth that opens doors in government and global finance. It is the ultimate vanity asset, a physical trophy that pays dividends in social capital long after it fails to pay them in dividend checks. It is a deeply volatile real estate asset,
governed by an uneasy alliance between operators who take no risk and owners who take all of it, operating under a cost structure so punishing that a tiny shift in global travel habits can crumble the entire operation. It is a business where the product being sold to the guest is ultimate luxury, but the product being traded behind closed doors is inflation-hedged land, tax efficiency, and global status. When you strip away the velvet ropes, the white glove surface, and the glittering chandeliers, a five-star luxury hotel is rarely what it appears to be on the surface. It is not a high-margin cash machine selling expensive rooms to wealthy travelers.